All right. Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this very, very special guest speaking event, just to kind of wrap up the Hispanic Heritage Month. And we're celebrating the end of this special event with Maggie and Frank Pabon. So we're going to have conversations with leaders, and this is just what we call the Latinx Love, the Work and Life Balance Edition. So once again, Maggie and Frank, thank you so much for not only agreeing to this, but making it happen. Thank you for Sean also for making it happen. This is a long time coming, and we here. Who's ready? Anybody ready?
I know I'm ready.
All
I need everybody to light up the chats with "I'm ready." I've been pushing for this conversation for like 3-4 years. So we are here to have it. Let's do it.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. So I just want to start with introducing Maggie. So Maggie, we all know her as Maggie, but her name is Margarita Ortiz Pabon, but most of us call her Maggie. So Maggie is the director of DTP, which is the Digital Technology and Partners Training Team. And I am fortunate to go from one Pabon to the next Pabon. So I'm still at home. So Maggie, welcome. We're ready to hear your story. And go ahead, Sean, take it off with Frank.
So, I had to introduce my guy, man. We have Frank Pabon, Director of Operations at the Central Billing Office. Frank has been a mentor of mine for over 6 or 7 years now. And when I tell you this took heavy convincing, it was a great thing to finally see that we're here to have this conversation as we approach the end of Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month. Here we are to celebrate these two. So thank you.
All right. So we're going to start with the first question. And I think most of us definitely want to know this. How did the Pabons even meet? Like, what year was it? What happened? What sparked it? Tell us. We're interested. We want to know.
I can start off, Frank. You're good with that?
Ladies first.
All right. So first, thank you for inviting us to be a guest celebrating Latin Heritage Month. It's an honor. How did we meet? So Frank and I, most people think we met at work, but the year was 1980. We were in the Bronx. Our families had moved into the same building complex on West 165th Street between Nelson and Woody Crest Avenues. That's the High Bridge section of the Bronx. This was my family's fourth move within a 4-block radius. We used to move around a lot. And Frank and I became friends. We played handball on the block. We were really young, right? So we're friends. We had the same friends. We went to the same house parties. We went to the same block parties, same church trips, Lake Welch, Sebago, that kind of thing. I think once we even went to Atlantic City, that was a treat. He worked across the street in the bodega, right across the street from the building. So I didn't eat candy at the time, but I would go in and buy, stick of gum here, this, that, and the other, just to drop by and see him. So our best friends started dating each other, and they invited us out to be like wing people for them. So we started going out, and we started dating. We had a lot in common. So we started dating. We dated for 10 years. We were married. We are now married for 30 years. So we've been together 40 years. I did that math. Our families are super close. Frank and I had a lot of similar goals, like, moving out, getting a house. We always grew up in apartments, and, we made those dreams come true. We wanted to do some things different than how we were raised, and some things keep the same, as far as traditions and our culture and things like that. We have 2 beautiful children, Sydney, age 28, and Justin, age 24. And yeah, that's how we met. I hope you have a similar story, Frank.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're on point. We moved into the building, yes. But I started to get to know people back in the day, we used to call it the block. I started to get to know people from the block once I started working in the bodega. And so, yeah, I worked in the bodega I worked 6 days a week. And at that time, it was for $15 a day. So $75 a week is all we made. But there was a benefit to me because if we lack something in the house in terms of food or milk or something like that, I can always get it from the bodega. So there definitely was a benefit to that, aside, from the minimal amount of money that we made. But she's right. We did go on a date. By the way, our first date was the worst date we both ever had. We did not hit it off on the first date. And it was the worst movie I've ever seen in my life, Pennies from Heaven with Steve Martin. I'll never forget the movie. I should forget the movie, but I'll never forget the movie. But yeah, Maggie hit it pretty much on point. That's how we met. As I started to get to know some of the people from the block, she was different than the other girls that I was talking to. I mean, when I say talking to, I was talking to as friends. I had no interest in anybody really from that block. But when I spoke to her, it was just a little more different. It wasn't the same old thing, the same old, talking about hanging out on the block, what's the gossip on the block and all that other stuff. With her, we were able to talk about stuff that we would do if we left the block. And, we were talking about things like we didn't know how we were going to leave the block, but we at least spoke about when we left the block, this is what we were looking for. So conversation is always stimulating. I'm going to tell all you ladies this, right? Just when you think that men don't think, we do think. Right? We do think. And so, I tell this to my daughter all the time, right? I always tell her, you either want to be the girl that the guy takes to mom, or you want to be the girl that he parties with, because we think about both. You think we don't, but we do. But anyway, that's how we met.
Perfect.
Wow.
I love it. So you said y'all play handball. Who won?
He always won. Yeah, listen, we used to play racquetball. We learned how to play racquetball when we got to Jersey, right? There was no handball courts anymore. So we joined teams, racquetball leagues. We were hardcore. We had our sneakers, we had our rackets, we'd go, and he'd always manage to move on to the next level. And I would always be like trying to beat him. Yeah, there was no competition there. I want to say I came close, but it never happened.
It does. You're right, Kelly. It does sound like Frank. Oh, I was about to say, man, you let her win one time, not once. Because
if I let her win once, it's as if she won every game.
That's correct. That's correct.
And to be honest, I didn't want to compete. I wanted her to learn. So I told her, let's not keep score. But she talks about me being competitive. She insisted on keeping score, even though we knew what the result was going to be. And then if I said, okay, you know what, I'm just going to try and volley, she would notice that all I was doing was volley, and she'd get upset that I was holding back. So I had to beat her.
Yeah, play like you play anybody else.
Oh, okay.
That's the way it should be.
That builds character. So we have some people in the chat saying whoop whoop to the Bronx. So it looks like we have a lot of Bronx in the house today. So they're definitely loving this true Bronx love story. To me, it sounds like Bonnie and Clyde, Beyonce and Jay-Z. These are the Pabons from Mount Sinai Hospital. So you guys are celebrities at this point. So thank you so much for sharing that information with us. It was amazing. But someone did have a question for you, Frank. Was there a second date though? Obviously, right?
There was a second date. We actually had a second date, and that date was much better. It's like the first date wasn't good. I don't even really remember why. I just know that we ended up sitting down, not talking to each other while we were in the movie theater.
Yeah, I know why, but it's a bit much. So one of my friends also liked Frank. This was the problem. Frank was well liked. Okay, so you know how people get gossipy and they're trying to, make it not work. So someone told me they overheard him say that do you remember this now, Frank? That you like me as a sister. So I'm like, why am I, so I went thinking that, so yeah, so I was very cold. I was like, I was just getting through the day. Remember, we would double date with our friends. So I just wanted to get through the day and, and then we eventually spoke and he said, why would I want to take you out so we had a second date and here we are 40 years later.
Beautiful. That sounds like somebody was trying to sabotage the
Oh yeah,
promoter.
big time.
Yeah,
a lot
but
of that. A lot of that.
There was there was a lot of that back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always
guys
going to
made
be
it.
there's always going to be outside influences, and then the fact that you all were able to block out the noise and built what you built it is amazing. So we are celebrating Latinx heritage, and we all know that we bring all of our cultures into our everyday lives. So the next question I'll come with is, how has your Latinx heritage and culture incorporated itself in not just your personal lives, but also your professional lives? And I'll start with Frank.
So the first thing that comes to mind is resilience. It's not easy coming to a country where you don't know the language, you don't know anything about the country, but you decided to make this your home. You decided to make this your home, and you decided to make this the home of your family, right? Because you always want to do what's best for your family. And so for anyone, it doesn't even only apply to the Latinx community, right? But for anyone who comes to another country, they don't know the English. They have to find a way to communicate for simple things like going to the grocery store, doing things around the house, communicating perhaps with like a super where, that you need to do something, medical bills, utility bills. It is not an easy thing, not an easy thing. So I've always said, I commend anybody who goes to another country to live, has to learn the language, and has to start from scratch. Having that, seeing my parents go through that, and then we ourselves had to go through that in school, one way or another. Back in the day, we also had to go through the same thing. So that resilience, and every time that we were able to move forward because of that resilience, was something that taught me that I needed to be resilient, both in my personal life and in my work life. So that's the first thing I think about resilience. The other thing is support system. I'm going to go back to that. You need that support system sometimes to be able to be resilient. Sometimes you can't do it on your own, right? And we as a Latinx community are really good with helping our neighbor, right? We lived in a building. My mother used to say, I got an appointment. Can you watch my kids? To the neighbor next door, the neighbor upstairs. And they said, sure, right? Sometimes they say, hey, your neighbor knew more English than you did. And they go with you to the appointment so that you can communicate. These are all things that I saw and learned that are good things to have, again, in order to create that path and keep moving on my journey, both in my professional and my personal. The one thing I always tell Maggie that she's not good with this is I'll always ask for a favor. And the reason why I don't mind asking for a favor is because if I ask you for a favor is because we have a certain relationship that I feel comfortable. By the same token, I have to be able to respect the fact that you might say no. And if you say no, it's not going to upset me, right? Because I know it's coming from a good place. If you could do it, you do it. So I don't mind asking for favors. I'll ask 2, 3, 4, 5 people for favors. I'm okay with if the answer is no. But again, that's me using that network in order to try and get done what I need to get done. And then the other one that I'm going to put in there is church. Church is everything. Church is a support system. Church is also a place where we learn, you network, because you learn not only who was in your building, but who's in your community. Now, all of a sudden, you can ask a favor from somebody who lived 3 blocks from you because they were from the church, right? Our families, before I knew Maggie, they knew each other through the church, right? So they already knew each other. So I think those 3 bullets are what really influenced me, both in my work and my personal life, that relate to my culture and me growing up in the Latinx community.
That was great. resilient support system in church. Those are all perfect.
Yep.
All right. How about you, Maggie?
Yeah, so so how has our heritage influenced us, work and personal? So we're both Puerto Rican, as you heard. Frank was born in Puerto Rico. I was born in New York. And actually, I was born at Mount Sinai Hospital. Isn't that cool? So
Full
it's
circle.
a fun fact. Yeah. So for the most part, our culture lends itself to being very friendly. We do things in groups. We love our culture. We have strong family bonds, and we come from parents that we watch work hard. So my heritage has influence in my professional life. For one, I think about my ability to deal with different types of people and personalities. We grew up around a lot of different characters, a lot of different people and groups, and just, so when I have to meet a new team, or, we have to do things with different teams, I feel like it's easier for me. I'm more, I can go with the role, on a different team. And this, my father, strong ethics is work ethic is another thing. My father, I used to watch him wake up at 4 a.m. He worked at the garment industry for 40 years in Manhattan. And I used to watch him do that, work hard, and my parents both, they did not go to high school. They had to be pulled out of school at a very early age. So I myself knew that education was important, and I started working at the age of 14 because I wanted to pull in a salary. I mean, you don't get a salary at 14, but I wanted to help, myself not be so much of a burden on my dad, who was the sole breadwinner in my house. So, if he didn't have to get me, because back when we were growing up, Frank could tell you, everything was Pumas, Adidas, Lee's, the jeans, Jordache, it was a look, Le Tigre, right? There was a look. And, I couldn't keep dipping into my father's pocket for these things. So, I worked. I wanted to, do these things. But I've always worked, and I kept on working. The other thing is, at one point, I was told that I didn't have enough education, college education for something. And so that pushed me, like I said, my parents, they left school at an early age. That pushed me to go back at the very least when my son was a baby. Because I said, at least let me get some college in, and having a support system. Let me tell you what Frank did. My classes let out at 10:50 at night. So by 11 p.m., he would wake up the baby, wake up Justin and Sydney. Sydney was 4, Justin was a baby. And he would wake them up, get them in the car. We only had one car, and he'd pick me up and go back home. And we did this for quite a few years. So, that's where the heritage influenced my my work life. Personally, there's certain things about our culture that we want to keep doing. So we want our children and our children's children, we don't have those yet, but that's the next phase of our life. We take trips to Puerto Rico, and we meet with our families, and our children know their cousins and their primo hermanos, which means your cousin is almost like your sibling, like they know each other like that. And their cousins here too. They're so close. I come from a small family. Frank comes from a big family, but his family's my family's his family, so that family thing, that being together, is really important to us. The food, the music, the dance, the holidays, the traditions, that's all something that we want to share with our families. It's a beautiful part of our culture, and we're always wanting to share with others those pieces of our culture. So those are some of the influence on our Latin heritage has on our personal and work life.
That is great. I love it. And the fact that you were there for each other. I mean, that is very, very commendable. So there's an interesting question in the chat. How long did it take you to propose, Frank?
Oh man, that's
That's sick.
man, that is a sore point of contention. All right, we're gonna go there. So it took me 10 years. Now, it took me 10 years because remember, we met each other when we were both young in the block. Okay. And I came from a home where the marriage was very, how should I say?
Fragile.
Fragile and violent. Okay. I saw what my mother went through. I saw how my father treated my mother. Now, there was a disease. My father was an alcoholic. So I saw all of that, and all of that influenced me. And the reality is, look, I needed to make sure that when I did this and I committed, I was going to do it. And I wasn't going to do it the way my father did it, right? Back in those days, you stayed in a relationship for your kids. Meanwhile, I spoke to my siblings. We were dying for them to get divorced because it wasn't healthy. It was not healthy at all. It was stressful for us every single weekend because my father would go out, come home drunk, and we knew it was going to be a fight. So for us, it was stressful every single weekend. So I wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be my life. I had a plan. My plan was to get married and have my first child by the time I was 30. Now, yes, it did take 10 years, but remember again, we started when we were very young, right? And I'm going to say some of what you ladies always say. You ladies mature sooner than we do. And if that holds true, you got to let us get to that mature stage, because I kind of agree with that statement. I think you women mature earlier or sooner than we as guys do, right? We are different. We like to think that we can change biologically. There's stuff that goes on in our bodies and in our brain where we are different. We are not the same. Now, I'm not advocating for somebody to wait 10 years, right? Because again, what I'm saying is that we were young. So if you want to count those years, yes, it's 10 years. But the age I got married, we got married at was 28.
I was 25.
So I was still in my, I was still in my 20s. I was 28. She was 25. I happen to think that that's a good age for two mature adults to get married. So yeah, it took 10 years, but I still think we got it right.
You got it right. All right.
I like that answer. I like that. Don't rush in.
Yeah.
Okay, Kelly, good.
No, and thank you for sharing that, because a lot of us here, like, we probably can relate. There's probably so many people here probably nodding their head like, I know exactly what he's saying. So that's, little do you know, you're dropping some jewels on a lot of us. So thank you so much for sharing that, Frank.
Sure.
Now, the next thing is, we see all of the great accomplishments, right? I know I've seen them. I still continue to see them. But have there been any struggles along the way for you guys? Both in your professional life, personal life, we see the accomplishments, we see what you bring to Mount Sinai, but what have been some struggles along the way?
So this, I don't know, Maggie, do you want to go first or do I go first?
I'll go first. I'll take a stab. So working together, I can't think of a single struggle. I can truly say that Frank and I working for Mount Sinai for more than 25 years. Knock on wood, we haven't had any struggles with work. Early on, we joined Beth Israel in 1993, and we worked at Fearman Hall on the first floor. We worked right next to each other as front-end data specialist positions. We literally sat next to each other, and folks didn't know that we were married. And we wanted to be seen as individuals so that we can make our path. And we knew we wanted to get into management, become a manager, then associate director, then director. So we had our paths. We did them at different times. There was a process. Our struggles, I wouldn't even call it struggle. It's a process, get people to know your work and get a great reputation and move up. So working together was not a struggle. Personal struggles that we worked together on were things like, we have a daughter who at the age of 4, we found out she had a retina disease. She couldn't see out of one eye. And, there's no manual that comes for children, right? To raise children. And it was like, did I do something? Why is she like that? What, she has something called Coates disease. And we saw it in pictures where the eye would reflect the light, and there's no cure for it. And we had to run to Boston and do all these things. And so the struggles that we had, again, because Frank and I, it's almost, we don't have to talk about it much. It's just, we have to do, you just have to do. And, here we are, we have a daughter. Yeah, she only has sight in one eye, but she drives, she played softball, she does everything, nothing limits her, the sky's the limit. We had a son who barely spoke. A lot of you may have this, our son, we knew he wasn't meeting his milestones, and we quickly had him evaluated. He went into early intervention, which means we had someone come over, give him speech services. At the age of 3, we had to put our son on a bus. He didn't even talk. And that was like, oh my God, my heart, get on a bus and go to school, to preschool, and go to, special ed services, and then inclusion classes. And I have to tell you, again, Frank was with me at every meeting. Frank was with me along the way. Like, it was just, this is what we did. We're taking off today. We have a meeting today. We listen. We advocate for our son. Let me tell you, my son graduated from college. He got a job right away. These are struggles, but what a beautiful outcome, right? Like, we work together, and it just, when you have a strong partner and you guys work together, you can overcome struggles. I think those are the 2 struggles that I could think of. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, no, we've never had an issue working together. Even when the hardest struggle I had when we were working back to back is because we were both at the front end. And anybody who's ever worked at the front end know it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I had to listen to her try and collect money from patients, and patients go off on her, and me have to sit there and not get up and punch somebody in the head. Right? That was not easy because we're back to back. And I would see some people from my department look. So I wouldn't even turn around, but I'd have a little eye in case it looked like it was going to get physical, that then, I'd get up. Then I was going to get up, but I never had to. But that was not easy. That was probably the biggest thing about us working back to back. I had to listen to patients go off on her when she was trying to collect some money, and that was not easy. Yeah. But aside from that, professionally, never been an issue. Even to this day, and I know it can be hard for people to believe, but remember, if it works, we stick to it. She can be having a conversation with someone at work and come home, and I don't know anything about the conversation. But it even happens amongst our friends, right? Any conversation we have is on a need to know, right? If she doesn't need to know and it's on her team, I still wouldn't tell her, right? Because she doesn't need to know. She'll find out when she finds out. It's going to take its normal path. But if she doesn't need to know, I don't share it. And so we both agree to that. So we'll sit and wait. I'm not going to tell you we don't sit sometimes and vent about work, but we don't talk about conversations that we have at work. Nothing like that. Nothing.
Yeah, I think that helps us out tremendously, because information has to come out when they come out from the people they have to come. How about if people change their minds? Now you look like you're spreading stuff. So it's always worked for us. There's a zone that we don't pass, and that has always worked for us for the like I said, 25 plus years that we've been at Mount Sinai.
I mean, we'll still ask the question, like she'll find something out and she's like, how come you didn't tell me? I'm like, for what? What would you have done different if I had told you?
Nothing.
You wouldn't have done anything different, so why tell you? I mean, you know, it's what would you have done different had you known a week earlier? You know, so we just decided that, you know what, we'll just keep it that way.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, like Daniela also indicated in the chat, right? Thank you for the honesty. Thank you for the transparency. Like you guys, you know, sharing a little personal part, because, you know, some of us know you personally, a lot of us don't. So just getting that information from both of you, I think you are actually helping us in the process. Once again, you're giving us good advice. And the one thing that I do hear a lot from both Maggie and Frank is the support system. Whether it's family, whether it's your partner, whether it's your friends, support is very, very important. So thank you so much for sharing that. Amazing.
Sure.
Frank, I sympathize with you, you know, having worked with my wife at some point. There are some things you have to hold back at the office because you see things, you hear things, and you're just trying to make sure that you both stay employed. So I'm with you right there, man. I totally understand, but everything Kelly stated is right on point. This has been a great conversation so far. I have one more question before we start to go into the Q&A, and I got a nice little hot spot for you guys, but it's nothing crazy. All right, we're gonna have some fun. So my last question is there any advice that you can give us to help us navigating work and also our personal life? And I want to be very specific. I'm talking if, you know, someone is having a relationship and a professional goal at the same time, balancing the both. What is the best advice you could give them? Frank, I'm gonna start with you.
So in terms of the personal life, right? Listen, one of the things that I've learned is when you're in a relationship, the key word that you always want to remember is you don't want to neglect. You don't neglect your partner. You don't neglect your children. You don't neglect your finances. You don't neglect intimacy. Neglect in any of those areas leads to problems, right? I'm not saying that those, right, there's a big, because neglect is a big word. You know, I'm not saying that you have to do these things all the time, but neglect is a big word. And when you neglect any one of those areas, and we could probably add another one or two more areas, right? But in the interest of time, you get the gist, right? Neglect is a big word. And what you have to do is first of all, you have to sit in front of a mirror and say, am I neglecting any of those? Before you start looking at your partner, say, am I neglecting any of those? Because you need to correct that. You need to correct that right away. And when you know, if you are neglecting it, then the second most important thing is communicate. You got to share it, because the longer it festers, then the more problematic it becomes. So it needs to be shared. Okay. Once you handle that part of the business while you're trying to focusing, I think you said on your job, right? Sean, I think is what you said. Mm-hmm. You know, I once read that people should focus on the job they have and not on the job that they want. Because when you focus on the job that you have, it opens up the opportunity for the job that you want. Right? So you need to focus on the job that you have. Because once you do that, it takes care of the other piece. Okay. The other one I have is fear keeps you safe, but it keeps you small. And I've always said that 100 times to anybody who I talk to. You got to step outside your comfort zones. You got to step outside your comfort zones because, you know, if you stay from within, you know, it's hard to grow, right? You got to remember, growing means I'm learning more and I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more different things. And so in order for you to do that, you have to step outside your comfort zone. And then you got to balance the two, right? There has to be a balance. So I normally work Monday through Friday, and Maggie can tell you because sometimes she's got to drag me out the room. I'm on the computer sometimes till 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm on sometimes, well, I'm on sometimes around 8 because we have 7:30 morning coffee every morning, 7:30 morning coffee, right? But Saturdays and Sundays are mine. That's my balance. You know, if I'm bored or if I'm just sitting at home, maybe I'll log on. But Saturdays and Sundays, that's our times. You know, that's why I'll do all the hours during the week because I'm already on. I'm already logged on, right? But on Saturday, I like to get up, have the 7:30 my 7:30 in the morning coffee, and then take my time, plan my day, you know, get out the house. So Monday through Friday, that's what I try to balance. Monday through Friday, it's work. Saturdays and Sundays are mine and my family's. I don't deviate unless it's an emergency. So I hope I answered your question, Sean.
You did. I thought you covered some really good points. And to your point, we could sit here all day and talk about, you know, what can you do to manage this stuff? But I think those are some good points for us to walk away with. Maggie,
Yes.
what would you give us?
Yeah, I agree with Frank. First of all, relationships are work, right? You know, looking back at Frank and I, you know, we had a lot in common growing up, right? That's what brought us together, the music, the culture, you know, the environment. As we each grow and learn and read and expose ourselves to different things, we may move away from that and have to work at, you know, finding that place again, you know. But that's real and that's part of a relationship, right? Frank starts listening to new music. I'm like, what is that? And then that's not too bad, you know. I'm just relating to the music right now. But you know, just know that, you know, relationship is work, just like, you know, we have to give time to our real work, we give time to our relationship. And you know, as far as a life partner, if you choose to have a life partner, you know, personally, I wanted to choose somebody who's always putting a smile on my face and making me laugh. And Frank does that constantly. Oh my gosh, he can make me laugh. And I'm so glad that we can have photography and videos today because sometimes, you know, I pull them out and we just, you know, start cracking up. But Frank is a constant in my life, and you know, he's a one and only constant, and that's not easy to find. I mean, I know we're not giving you know, advice on relationships, but yeah, I give that. And as far as advice for work, you know, always be yourself. You know, we all come with something different. We bring different things to the table, which makes us special. And sometimes you may not notice, but your best is more than you thought you can deliver. And the outcome is pretty amazing. So, you know, I had a boss one tell me, Maggie, just be yourself. Because I'm always in my own head. I'm very, you know, I'm always thinking and in my own head. I mean, even doing this, I was like, you know, but that's part of me. The adrenaline makes me, you know, try to put my best forward in anything that I do, whether I'm speaking to someone or I'm presenting, but always be yourself, always be yourself. And one thing I've learned along the way is that sometimes time is a thickener of things. I had a 5th grade teacher tell me this, and I didn't understand what that was until I was much older. Sometimes we come across issues and, you know, we're so quick. I don't know about everybody else, but in our line of business, we're quick. We get issues. We got to resolve them. We get issues. We get emails. We get pings. We get, you know, and sometimes you have to lean back into it, you know, and just sometimes it resolves itself, maybe not completely, but just a little bit enough that you're like, okay, now I can deal with this. So, you know, one thing I've learned is I'm the type of, I use the word a lot, you know, let it marinate, let it, you know, sometimes you don't have that. So you can't let everything marinate. Let's be for real, right? Because sometimes you got to come up with a solution and that's it. But sometimes you let time and things thicken up. It's like that the habichuelas, right? You're making beans and it's watery at first, but you keep cooking it and it starts thickening up, right? So I can liken it to that. But yeah, that's my advice. I don't want to take more time. That's what I got.
No, that's beautiful. I think one of the key things you said too, Maggie, was understanding who you're with and accepting them for who they are, and us accepting who we are. And most importantly, the best word you said was work, right? It is work, but you have to be willing to put in that work. I can't thank you both enough for sharing those gems with all of us here today. All right, I'm gonna pass it to Kelly.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of that information. I feel like we're all taking something from each one of you. So thank you so much for sharing your journey, sharing those key little things that we need to take into consideration for our own lives. Now, we did try to do something a little different. We gave people the opportunity because, you know, sometimes depending on who it is, we might be shy to ask a question directly. So we did have anonymous questions submitted. So only due to time, definitely, if we love this conversation, we can definitely do a part 2, everyone. Let us know how you feel about that. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask one of those anonymous questions. You ready, Frank? You ready, Maggie?
Oh, go for it.
All right. What strengths do you both share in the work life that does not work at home?
That's a good one.
So what strengths do you both share in the work life that does not work for both of you at home?
Wow. Let me see.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
I don't know. Have we
okay.
made it too easy? We apply everything from work and home and home. That doesn't.
I mean, so I'm not going to say it doesn't. I'm not going to say it doesn't apply at home. It does, but I'm going to say patience. It applies at home, but we have more influence at home than we do working with people at work. And I think it requires us to have a little more patience at work than we do at home. And I think it's because we've been together for so long that we, you know, sometimes we need patience, and we know if the other one is going to come around. I'll know if I feel that she's going to come around. She knows if I feel that it's going to come around. But when you're working at work, the influence is not the same. So if only because it was a great question, I've never been posed that question. What comes to mind right away, like I said, in the interest of time, is patience.
I got one.
It's different.
I think I've thought of one. So in our different positions at work, we are both decision makers, right? We are leaders. We have to take the lead. We have to make a decision. So that's our role at work. When we get home, it doesn't mean that one of us is always making the decisions. You know, we both make decisions. And it goes back to just, you know, we talk things out, work things out, and, you know, we make a decision together. So there's not like, you know, he rules, he trumps me. No, sometimes I trump you, right, Frank? Yeah. So it depends on what the topic is, right? Yeah, so I think that being the sole decision maker in our role, to a certain extent, right? Because we collaborate with our teams, that's something different. But when we go home, we're not hardcore the decision maker. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that really was. That was a great question, whoever submitted.
It was a
that.
great
Thank you.
question.
All right, we'll probably get into 1 or 2 questions in the Q&A. The first one is a good one. Do you still go on date night? And if so, what is your idea of the perfect date night? I'm going to start with you, Maggie.
Yeah, we still go on date night. I think getting away, just this past weekend, we went to see some good old friends of ours upstate. The plan was to go to a winery, but that kind of bombed out. It ended up being a fall festival and such. But we had so much fun. We had laughs. So we double date a lot. We do double date. That I should say. Not that there's a problem with just us two going out. I'm just thinking short term, just recently. This weekend, we're going to go out again. We'll call it double date again. So yeah, we still date. We still double date. We still date and double date. Frank?
So it all right. So it all depends on what your idea of a date is. Right. An idea of a date for me is that we're doing something together. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, we have a date every morning. 7:30 in the
That's
morning,
true.
coffee.
That's true. That's our
Right.
date.
So we have a date every morning, 7:30 in the morning. We, if it's cold, we're inside the house. If it's a little warmer, we go outside the house, and we talk about whatever we want to talk about for
And
about a
7
half
p.m.
hour. Yeah, for about a half hour or 35 minutes. Sometimes I bring my little box out with a little music and I play a little music to set the tone, right? But it all depends
That's
on what
true.
your concept of a date is. We watch certain series together. That's a date for me. Right. So to me, a date is, are you making specific time to be with each other? So to me, that's a date.
Jeopardy,
Do we-
Frank. Jeopardy.
Jeopardy every day at 7:00, we watch Jeopardy every day. So we have multiple dates. And then we have the typical date that everybody else talks about, going out, if we're going out to dinner. But a date with us is also with our kids. I include my kids. We both love hanging out with our kids. So,
Love it.
a date can be the four of us. So do we still date? The answer is yes. Remember what I said before, you don't want to neglect. And those are just some of the little ways that you don't neglect. Those are some of the ways that you carve some time out of your day to spend together. Notice sometimes it's only 30, 35 minutes, but you still carved it out.
Absolutely. All right.
It's like
all right.
watering the plant. You keep watering the plant so that it can grow.
There you go. You see, you ought to be a preacher. Take it to church, Kelly. You always take it to church.
Love it. Love it.
I got you, Frank.
So the next one, and I love this question because, and I'll use myself as an example, right? How do you divvy up the house responsibilities? So for instance, there's a reason why I don't do the dishes. I know y'all are looking at the screen judging me, but I'll tell you what, she doesn't like the way I wash the dishes. She says that I don't know what I'm doing. So Frank, I'm going to start with you this time. How do you divvy up the household responsibilities?
So, I don't know. For the most part, I take care of the outdoors. Once the summertime comes around, snow comes, I'm shoveling. Right. Now that once my son got older, he cuts the grass, but I still have to trim and I still got to do the bushes, and all that other stuff. I take out the garbage. I take out the recycles.
You pay the
Right.
bills.
I pay the bills. It wasn't always that way. We agreed that, she paid it in the beginning. She didn't like doing it. I paid it in the beginning. We agreed that I would pay it in the beginning. Then, she had her moment where it was like, why can't I pay the bills? I said, go ahead. You think this is fun? Go right ahead. But then she didn't like paying the bills. And she said, you know what? You can go ahead and pay the bills. So I pay all the bills. Right. Maggie's a nurturing person. So for the most part, she takes care of a lot of the stuff that has to do with the family. Even when the kids were small, she was a lot more patient with homework. She was a lot better at it, very patient. So for the most part, the homework stuff, it was her. In terms of making sure that everybody gets fed, it's her. I occasionally dabble in cooking. In my family, all the men cook. And when I say that they cook, I mean they cook every day. The women don't cook. I come from a line of men that cook. I cook, but usually it's like a holiday coming. I'll do the pernil. I do most of the baking in the house. In terms of the dishes, either one of us will do it. Either I'll do it. Maggie likes using the dishwasher. I like the old-fashioned way, doing the dishes. Right. In terms of laundry, it's the same thing. We both do laundry. Well, actually, she'll tell you while I'm downstairs working out, in between that I'm resting, I'm throwing a load in there and I'm washing clothes. And I'm also drying clothes and I'm also folding clothes. By the way, I wash my own clothes. I wash and fold my own clothes.
Everybody in the
correct.
house washes their own clothes.
Washes and folds. So if I'm washing and there's clothes downstairs, I'll throw somebody else's clothes down, throw it in there. So I don't know if it was something that was verbally said. I don't think that we sat there and we said, hey, you do this, you do that, you do this, right? I think the key is that it doesn't make it seem like one person is doing everything and the other person is not doing anything at all.
Right.
I don't know if you necessarily have to divide the responsibility. By the way, I also make beds.
Oh, he
Yeah,
does
I
it
make
all, right,
beds.
Maggie?
I make
Say it again?
beds. I
He
clean.
does it all.
He does it all.
He does it all.
He's amazing.
I
I honestly would love to have him stay home and take care of the house and dinner, and it would be amazing.
When I make the bed, and first of all, they all get scared in the house when I clean because I move stuff. Or right away, I start saying, why we got this? This is garbage. Why we got this? What do we need this? I start cleaning out all the way. And when I make the bed, you swore I'd done a day in the service. I haven't, I haven't done a day in the armed services. But again, that's watching my mother. That's going to go back to my cultural upbringing. That's watching my mother with 4 kids having to clean the house. I've seen her clean the house. So some of that was instilled in me. But anyway, we don't divvy up the responsibilities. I mean, at this point right now, it's been so many years we've been doing it like that. The roles is, if it needs to get done, one of us is going to do it.
All right. Perfect. I love it.
This is why we're calling this conversation the Latinx Love, the work and life balance of the Pabones. Amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. It is rapid fire time, people. As I ask these questions, I just simply want you to raise your hand. If you want to add 2 cents, you can, but we're going to have some fun. I think you guys are going to like this. All right. I mean, the first one I think is pretty obvious. You kind of answered it, Frank, but who's the better cook?
I'm going to say she is. We just cook different things.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent. How about who takes longer to get ready in the morning?
Frank.
Oh, that's going to be me.
What?
That's going to be me. Yeah, man.
What?
Listen, I have a whole concert.
He has.
I have a whole
He's
concert.
the opening act and the
Yeah,
show.
that's
You
correct.
do like the face cleanser and you like getting the
I do
pants,
I do moisturizer. I got to lotion up my skin. I got no shame in the game. Yes, I take longer,
Okay.
without a doubt.
So
All
the
right.
next one is, who is the grumpier one in the morning?
I'm gonna say Maggie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we wake up in the morning, right away you start thinking about work.
Oh, so
The
yeah.
stress of work.
Yeah. So me, but that's before coffee. If I have my coffee, I drink my personality. And it's fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So who's more stubborn out of the 2?
Frank.
I would say it's
He didn't even fight it. He's like, yep.
no. She didn't even let you finish the question.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
Frank said, I'll take that. I'll take that.
All right.
All right. I'll
All
do
right.
one more.
Uh-huh.
Who's the bigger baby when they're sick? Who wants to be babied when they're sick?
Maggie.
Yeah, maybe. I break
Maggie,
more bones.
Yeah.
There's always something. Shoulder, knee.
So remember, right, like I said, Maggie's more nurturing. Like she'll come over to help, and I'm like, Maggie, I could do it myself. There's a lot of stuff that Maggie wants to come over and do, and I'm like, I could do it myself. Like if I get up to do coffee, she's like, I got that. I said, I know how to make coffee. She goes, I got that. Go sit down.
Yeah, not me, man. The world is ending when I'm sick.
Do we have a minute?
That's a woman for you, though.
Do we have a minute? I got one story that I want to tell that I always tell as to how nurturing Maggie is. Do we got a minute?
Can I just get these last few questions?
Okay, go ahead.
Raise your hand and then yeah.
Good.
All right, so who's the social butterfly?
Oh, that's me.
Frank.
Right.
Just right.
That's me. That's me.
Who apologizes first after a fight?
Me.
I'm gonna say probably Maggie. Maggie.
All right. And who said I love you first?
Frank.
Yes.
Aw,
Oh,
aw.
Mhm.
he's so cute. All right.
I know-
All right, go ahead, Frank.
I know I surprised you all with that, didn't I?
Yes, yes.
So how nurturing, right? And I'm going to tell this story, right? Because this is advice to everybody else also. So she's so nurturing and she doesn't realize it. So we went to her godparents' house one time in the summer for vacation. And now her godparents had been married like something like 40 years. So when we're in the house, they say, hey, would you guys like some coffee? And we say, yeah, we like some coffee. So her godmother has a coffee cup and brings it out and gives it to her godfather. And her godfather's holding the coffee cup. And then the godmother goes and she puts sugar like this. She puts sugar in the cup and then she takes it and she stirs it while he's holding it. All right. So after that, Maggie came back when we got home and she said, did you see that? Like he can't pour his own sugar. Like he just stood there and held a cup of coffee while she stirred it. Like he couldn't put, and I was like, Maggie, they've been married 40 something years. It works. You leave them alone, right? Fast forward maybe 10 years. We're sitting in the house and Maggie says, hey, would you like some coffee? I say, yeah. She comes over, she brings me a cup of coffee. She goes, hold on, there's no sugar in it. She takes the sugar, she puts it while I'm holding it. She stirs it while I'm holding it. And I'm like, does this sound familiar to you? I said, your godparents. And she said, no, it's different. No, it's not. I didn't ask you to do this. You wanted to do it. She wanted to do it. Stop thinking that just because what you see, you're judging. Stay out of it. They've been together 40 years. We mind our business. It works for them. She didn't look like she was unhappy. She didn't look like she was stressed out. You know what? She liked nurturing and taking care of her husband. And that's why I'm saying that Maggie's very nurturing. She doesn't even realize it because she was doing the same thing. I didn't ask her to do it. I didn't ask her to do. Anyway, that's my quick story.
Came naturally.
That's
All
correct.
right. So it came to an end. I feel like we were waiting for this day. It came and it flew by so fast. I think we all enjoyed this conversation. Maggie, Frank, thank you so much. Both of you are amazing individuals. You are great examples, great leaders. So we might have to do a part 2 if everyone is down for that. Now, just real quick, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon with Conversations with Leaders, Frank and Maggie Pabon, the only Pabones, the next Beyonce and Jay-Z of Mount Sinai. This was the Latinx Love, the Work and Life Balance. So thank you for joining us one more time. We definitely value your feedback. I will actually send an email with this link, but if you want, please complete our survey. Let us know what you thought about today's event. There is a QR code that you can scan directly on your phone. Once again, I will send out an email with this link. And also remember, HOLA, Heritage of Latinx Alliance. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for always being there for everything that we do. If you want to become an HOLA member, if you're not one as of yet, or you want to receive any emails about HOLA's future and upcoming events, I will also send that link for you. You can also scan that QR code at the bottom of your PowerPoint. So everyone, thank you so much. Have an amazing day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly and Sean. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Kelly and Sean.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
It was our
Bye.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.